Buff Nation. Hopefully everybody's having a wonderful Friday. Y'all stay warm. We got that huge cold front coming in, below zero temps everywhere. But hey, at least we're not in Kansas City. At least we're not playing an outdoor football game this weekend. But yeah, y'all stay safe. Make sure you got plenty of water at home. But I mean, what better way to start the weekend? I have a brand new guest here on the show. Glad we've been able to make it happen after a while. Russ from Buffs News Weekly. How's it going? How's your Friday?
Good. Like you said, pretty cold. I'm located in Montana, so we're experiencing some very, very cold weather.
Man, what's the temperature up there?
I think right now it's like -20. I'm in the southern part of the state. If you start going north, you're probably more like -40 up to -50.
Oh my goodness. That is insane. Well, hopefully no power outages, anything like that. We can get through the show just fine. But man, I'm pumped to have you on here. It's been great to see more Buffs content creators pop up here, just like myself over the last year or so. And before we get started talking about a bunch of, the Buffs news pieces over the last few weeks, getting your take on it, would just love to hear from you. What's your Buffs fan story? What got you starting, your channel and your Twitter account?
Yeah, so Buffs fandom goes back to probably the late 90s. I have a really good friend whose family kind of adopted me. His dad was a CU alum, huge CU Buffs fan, so we were always watching games and things with them. The furthest back memory I have would be the 2002 Fiesta Bowl, the loss to Oregon. And I remember that quite clearly, and having to deal and see Joey Harrington just completely demolish us in that bowl game. But that was kind of when it began. Overall, I'm just a huge Colorado sports fan. Grew up in Southern Colorado most of my life. The only thing that I don't have is I am not technically a CU alum. I went to a different school in Colorado because I did get a soccer scholarship. So I am technically a soccer player, even though I'm probably the size of a football player. Most people see me and they think that I played football. So always been kind of following college football, CU. I've always also been a fan of Coach Prime. Followed his time at Jackson State. I coach high school sports now, so I've always kind of been interested in his coaching philosophies and motto. And so the moment that I saw that he was potentially coming on, I was completely back in. I watched CU games, throughout the 2010s when things just weren't great. I kept up with the 2016 season, obviously, with kind of the Cinderella run in the Pac-12. When Mel Tucker up and left, kind of frustrated me for a while, as I'm sure it did other fans. So, but Coach Prime definitely pulled me back in. When it comes to starting the YouTube channel, which has only been going for about a month, but so far we've been seeing some amazing results just because of how amazing Buff Nation really is. But my background is in college, I was a communications major. I interned at the Fan radio station in Denver.
No way.
I've always wanted to do sports and sports media and things like that. And what I've started to watch over the last several years, because I have a couple other podcasts that I work with that are non-sports related, I was like, this is the time to do what I've always wanted to do, which is sports media. It's the easiest time, I think, ever to be a content creator if you just, pick up some equipment, post it online, and go from there. So that's kind of where I finally was like, you know what? I see so many of you guys doing such amazing things in the community, growing your channel, all the other Buffs channels that have kind of popped up in the last couple of years. So I thought I could do that. And on top of that, I saw a little bit of a crack in the space. I saw a lot of content creators who are just posting like random news when it hits. Great. You do a great job of breaking down, individual stories and news and information, especially players. And then you have things like DNVR, who's kind of the professional aspect of it. So I thought to myself and saw, there's nobody really doing a recap news segment where I can just go to this once a week and figure out, okay, what happened in Buff Nation this week before I dive into everybody kind of going in more depth and more detail as far as the news pieces go. So, like I said, so far in the first month, we have about 57 subscribers, 15,000 views between all of our different shorts and regular posts. So it's just been amazing to see. And again, how much you guys have also welcomed me with open arms, whether it's you guys or some of the other aspects that I've been a part of, especially on social media.
Man, I absolutely love that. And yeah, like finding your little niche, finding your little thing that you want to do differently, man. I think that's what makes this whole thing so beautiful. Because, man, like I get on here, I get all distracted, I lose track of time. You know, it's wonderful to just have, hey, I can go to this thing at least, once a week and understand what just happened. You don't have to listen to a 2-hour show or anything like that. And I think I think that's wonderful. And hey, the more people that are on here talking about the Buffs, man, it's just, to me, that makes it more fun. And yeah, man. So welcome, Russ. You got my support, and let's keep this thing rolling. Now, I am highlighting a couple questions in the comment thread. We'll get to that here in a bit. But, overall, let's talk really quickly about what your expectations or hopes were for CU entering this offseason after going 4-8. And how do you feel like they've done so far?
Yeah, so I mean, in all honesty, we kind of knew this was coming in. Like when I was looking into last season before it hit, with all the different changes and with all the different players they brought in, I was definitely around that 4 to 5 win mark with the hopes of a bowl game. If I'm being honest, I mean, I'm not some crazy person that's just going to think, oh, we're going to go win the Natty the first year with Prime. While I would love that, and while Coach said that's what his goals were, we can be realistic in our expectations. So the fact that we got where we did, the best part about the season, though, I think, is just how close we were in all those games. Yes. We were pretty darn close to bowl eligible, to 8 or 9 wins. And I think a lot of people forget that when they look at our schedule. You got the opposing fans who are always commenting 4-8, 4-8. And I'm like, yeah, it's 4-8, but that doesn't tell the whole story. Now watch those games and tell me that it was the same 4-8 that you're thinking. So seeing what they've brought in this year, I love that Coach immediately, addressed the things that we needed: the offensive line, the defensive line, and then some extra playmakers on the outsides, which you can never use enough of. So I'm really excited. On top of that, if you really look into it, again, everybody's saying, oh, he's doing the same thing. It's a lot less transfers, and it's a lot higher quality of a transfer. If you look at the transfer portal ratings on these players, more higher rated players are coming in and lower player rateds are going out. And overall, we're making a turnover that's way higher than what we had last year. So that, on top of the new Big 12, on top of the schedule and the teams we're playing, we're definitely going to be better than we were last year. I think an 8-win season is not completely out of the picture this upcoming year. Bowl has to be at minimum. We have to make a bowl at minimum. There is nothing below a 6-win season that is acceptable for this next year.
No doubt. And the fact, I'm going to backtrack really quick on something you were saying. 4-8 doesn't tell the whole story. The fact that, so many of us want to get on here, whether it's Twitter or just talk with our friends, and we feel passionate enough to complain about what's going on, or like we want to point out what's going right, what's going wrong. The fact that we care, 4-8's not going to tell that, man. The fact, like the worst thing as a fan is to feel apathetic. The fact that we're brought out of that now going into this season, it's a huge win. And if you're not following this team, you don't understand how big of a deal it is that we care, or that we have haters.
It's really interesting because it's that we care again. I mean, people don't realize what we've dealt with the last 10 years here with Boulder and Colorado football. It has not been fun to watch those games. It has not been fun to watch recruiting. It's not something you pay attention to. And now it's exciting. I mean, what Coach Prime is doing, in all honesty, we haven't seen since the early 90s as far as recruiting goes. Besides a couple surprise recruits that we've had over the last 20 years that really didn't pan out, we have not seen the type of and level of play and these players that he's brought in 30 plus years. So as a Buffs fan, it's the most exciting time to have. And there's a reason why we are now being critical of this, because there are expectations. And I would say that Coach Prime himself is fine with us having these expectations and being critical of what's happening, because he's doing the same exact thing to the team.
No doubt. No doubt. Now, getting back to the team, you were talking about, and I totally agree with you, the level of player that we're bringing in is so much more high quality. And the transfers that we've seen, honestly, outside of maybe Hankerson, they haven't played a significant role on this team. And so in terms of continuity, outside of the guys that ran out of eligibility, we're bringing back, all of our, high snap, high impact guys that played this past year and building on that. But who are a few guys that come to mind during this recruiting portal or process so far, period, that you're really excited about?
I mean, you have to look at the trenches most of all. Like we'll always get those playmakers, and so those can be exciting. But the offensive line moves, Mayers, Johnson, I think are two of the better ones on that side. On the defensive side, we're finally getting some beefy players down the middle, which I think we so desperately needed. You could see, I went back and watched the Utah game recently, and to just see how easy Utah's offensive line was pushing us around was just absolutely ridiculous. And when you look at the size of the players that we had playing in that game, you know exactly why they were getting pushed around. So adding players like Owonkwo and the guy we just added from Arkansas, Carter, those are 300-pound men that are on there that are going to be now plugging up holes on the defensive front. Just like you and all Buffs fans, I'm interested to see who becomes the defensive coordinator so that we know what formation we're running, what defensive structure are we going to be running. Because in all honesty, I want to believe the rumors of a Jim Leonard as the defensive coordinator just because of some of the players we're getting and how we're setting up. I mean, it looks like we will have that nose tackle 3-4 defense just because of the couple of guys we brought in. We have some big boys we can plug there. But that's unbelievable. And I just saw that pop up. I'm not forgetting Seton. I'm more talking transfer portals. When we're talking about just recruiting, nothing beats a Jordan Seton recruitment for the CU Buffs. Probably the biggest get in the last 20, maybe since the running back Scott back in the 2000s. Right. That was one of the top recruits in the nation. Have we ever seen something like that come to pass here in Boulder?
Yeah, no doubt. It's hard to be too or like picky about. I mean, I'm thrilled about all the guys that we're bringing in here, but with the offensive line, man, I'm thrilled about it. I think it's going to be a substantial improvement. I probably sound like a broken record saying this, but hey, if we can get to average ranking nationally for offensive line performance, I think that's going to do wonders for this team, wonders for this offense. Again, the fact that we were averaging, I think we finished with around 28 points per game or something like that with the worst offensive line in college football. Imagine what we're doing if we're ranked in the 60s or 70s, man. It's going to be great. This is a really interesting thought. And I haven't brought this up on the show, so I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, Russ, but I was listening to Adam Munster Tiger's podcast earlier this week, and he mentioned something that was kind of interesting. I haven't heard from anybody else covering the Buffs. He was, asked to give his starting offensive line lineup right now. And he mentioned right now Hank Zelinskis right now as his starting center, which I thought was very interesting. He hasn't been a guy that I brought up at all talking about, next season with the starting offensive line. But How do you kind of see this interior right now shaking up? How do you see Zelinskis?
I mean, to be honest, I would kind of agree with him. I think Zelinskis was one of the better.
I'm sorry, I always pronounce it wrong.
No, I have trouble with it too. So whatever, Hank. We'll call him Hank.
Okay, let's do it.
He when he played and filled in for Van Wells at center, he actually did a pretty decent job. So him already knowing the system, already having a relationship with Shedeur, like. People don't realize the center quarterback relationship is one that's pretty important. And I don't think we really have, besides him, a natural center. Like there's been talk about Tyler Brown switching to center. I believe he's even confirmed on social medias that is his target goal is to go for center. So if that's the case, great. That's some good competition. So we'll see what happens there. But as far as experience, returners, who played pretty decently. Like I've watched some of the snaps that he had in those games. He wasn't as bad as some of the others. It's really the problem is the guard position was our biggest problem last year. Watching some of those games where those two guards literally touched nobody off the snap is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. Like not even a hand. Not even a hand reached over to just even make contact with those guys at times. It makes you wonder, like, what was going on? Did they just not know the scheme? Did they not know the plays? What was happening at that position?
I'm not going to go too dark side, Dave, on this podcast. You know, I've discussed my theories for why the line play was the way it was, but I think, man, with Coach Oldholt coming in here, I think my expectation is we're going to see everybody improve, including Kay Vizzy's bringing it up. Your Kiri Walker, he's another guy that could be right in there starting, and I think this is a great kind of problem that we have right now is that we can't really say who is going to be our starting offensive lineman right now because we really are bringing in a lot of competition and guys that are going to compete. Before we transition talking a little bit about defense and all of that, let's man, y'all terrible. I want to know your thoughts right now on Pat Shurmur and what you think some of the strengths of him being offensive coordinator could be, what your opinion of him is, how you might feel or how you might see the offense looking in terms of scheme this next year.
I mean, I'll be honest, when he first got announced that he was switching up and going with him as the OC, I was a little bit worried and had a little bit of PTSD as a Broncos fan. We all know how that went here, but also when he was named the Broncos OC, I was of the mind that I haven't seen him really ever have a good offense. He does a lot with little. Whether it's he has not ever really had a big name quarterback. He's always had, Case Keenum had his best season under him. So many of these quarterbacks. And so I look at our offense and I think, okay, he has probably the most weapons he's ever had at any level of football across the board with what CU brings. So that's one. Two, a lot of people will say, well, it wasn't that much of an improvement at the end of the season when he was calling plays. People have to realize he was still working with Sean Lewis's offense. That was not the Pat Shurmur offense. He was instituting new things, trying new things within that system. And so you saw flashes of it at times with what he was able to do. But I think I would at least give him a season to be able to really work on this team and see what he can do. Would I have loved some big name OC to come in and take over? Absolutely. But the other problem with this that we have to realize is we have Travis and Shedeur for one more season.
Yeah.
We cannot afford to start completely fresh with a new system that they have to learn. Like at least some of the stuff may transition over a little bit better. The relationship with Shurmur is already there. So I'm wondering if Coach Prime is thinking, unless some really big name had to come up that would have been interested in the job behind the scenes, I think he was like, I'd rather just stick with continuity than change everything over for one season. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I think that, again, you could bring in the best offensive coordinator out there, but if you're not aligned and there's not trust, you're never going to reach that full potential. And so I think the fact that that there is trust between Coach Prime, Shador, Pat Shurmur. That's a great thing, and you're going to have some sort of level of competency going into next year. I don't think there's going to be any potential for just a total offensive scheme meltdown or anything that we see happening. I kind of liked in the Utah game, we saw a little bit more use of the pistol. We saw some use of quarterback under center a little bit more as Shurmur was calling plays, and I'm hoping that we see more of that implemented in spurts rather than just running literally everything out of the gun, especially with the run game. I think that there's some advantages that we can have mixing that up a little bit on how we're taking that snap, how we're running the ball, all of that. Really quickly, I guess since I led with this, well, I put it on the photo of today's episode. Any thoughts on Devin Rispres coming out here to help with the recruiting, joining the rest of the staff that we got? I'm pretty pumped about that. Any thoughts or reaction?
Oh, I when I saw that news, I thought it was perfect. It makes sense. Prime has some connections there with FAMU, and with their head coach leaving, they were prime for that. And everything I've read up on him to get to know him a little better says that he is one of the best recruiters in FCS. He has a ton of connections in the state of Florida, which again continues the trend that we have with wanting to dominate the state of Florida for recruits. So I think he's absolutely perfect. I think he's going to do another great job. Anytime we can get extra people on that recruiting team, yes. Those don't really affect the coaching staff or how many coaches we have or who's getting paid on that end. So it's completely fine to build up that end. And now, my assumption is he's going to kind of focus on those Florida dogs and bringing them in based on his connections with the schools and things that he has there. So that is a huge get for the team. Really smart on Coach Prime. I'm a little surprised he didn't end up going with their head coach to his new position. I know that
Duke or North Carolina. I'm trying to
Duke.
think.
Yeah, okay. It's Duke. I get it. He's only a position coach there, so that's probably why. Yeah. But I would have vouched for something like that to come with it. But now it makes sense, that Coach Prime kind of being the connection and what he can do out here. So huge get.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm pumped about it. But let's talk about defense, man. Let's talk about defense. We're bringing in a lot of guys here. Let's see, DJ McKinney at corner. Who else we got? Chidozie Nwankwo at defensive tackle. We got Barnes, Wiggins, Keaton Wade, Okunlola, a bunch of guys. Who are some guys that you're really excited about coming in on the defensive end?
Probably my biggest, who I'm excited for the most would be Okunlola.
Yeah.
I was really bummed when we didn't get him last year. He was one of the guys I was really following along with when we were recruiting him to come here, and was mad when he ended up at Pitt. So seeing him, jump ship, come back over here with already a season under his belt where he played at Pitt. He didn't just sit the bench the whole season. He didn't redshirt. It's not completely from scratch. So that whole first year is out of the way. He got that experience. He got to play. He got, the whole college experience for 1 year. So overall, I think he's one of the most exciting ones that I have. And then the interior, Wiggins, yeah. Barnes, Nwankwo, yesterday the signing of Torian Carter.
Yeah.
Finally getting some really big bodies on that defensive line, I think is huge. My only thing that I'm just regretting and waiting for is we need linebackers bad.
Yes.
That is the biggest thing that we need, and I want to see us super active in that. Losing Lundy, only having the couple of linebackers we had is just so much, and so. Yeah. We need to address that ASAP.
Yeah, no doubt. I think one thing that I'm just waiting on that I assume is going to happen is LaJohntay Wester's brother coming over here, Jalen Wester at linebacker. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I would like to see us bring in some other guys, but regardless of who we have there at linebacker, I think that the improvement that we're making on the defensive line interior as well as the edge play is going to help out whoever is back there. In terms of scheme, I guess this goes into defensive coordinator possibilities. I know we've touched a little bit on Jim Leonard and whatnot, but I haven't really looked in too deeply into what kind of schemes that they employ. But how do you see this talent being used?
Well, again, it comes down to who is the defensive coordinator and what system we have. That's the only way we're going to truly know how people are going to be used. What kind of, cornerbacks are we going to see? How are we using safeties? How will the linebackers be used? Is Okunlola going to be on the line edge, or are they going to transfer him to be an outside linebacker in a 3-4 to rush the passer? There's so many different questions that I don't think we can really answer that just yet. I don't think we can answer who's going to be our starters yet. What formation are we going to run? All of that is kind of up in the air until they name the coaches. I will say a lot of the coaches that are being rumored, again, the bad part is I think all these rumors have more came from us, the fans, and some of the media. I have yet to hear somebody say concrete. I have heard that this name has been talked about in the building because they are so tight-lipped.
Yes.
So we just assume who it might be. I wouldn't be surprised if it's somebody that no one's ever mentioned. Because Phil Lodehold is a good example. We talked about OCs for weeks, or offensive tackle coaches and line coaches, and Lodehold's name never came up in the conversation once until he was here and a recruit, tagged him, which I guess we technically had that happen. I think yesterday somebody got offered from a Coach Gunner on CU, and now it looks like he's like the I don't really remember, tight end offensive line coach.
I think he's another offensive line coach that we have. Probably will have an analyst official title, but he'll be.
So we have no idea who's in the building. We really don't until they show up on a well-off video. Like half the time we don't even find out. So as far as the DC goes, like I said, I hope it's Jim Leonard. I think he'd be the biggest get. I have quite a bit extensive background with him. I have a large section of my family that is unfortunately from Nebraska, and they are Nebraska fans. And at certain holidays, I would have to watch the Nebraska-Wisconsin games back when Jim Leonard was the DC there. And those Wisconsin defenses were unbelievable in the ability to just push people around, be physical. When you out-physical Nebraska and their so-called, kind of blue-collar farm-type defenders and offensive linemen, that's just it's crazy to see. So some of the things that he does, his philosophies, since that rumor came up, I've been just looking at every video out there on him to be able to see, okay, what does he believe? What does he want? I think he fits perfectly in here. I think he would be an unbelievable get. The only negative with that decision would be, I think he's a one and done. I think he comes here for 1 year as DC. He'd be a head coaching candidate right away if he succeeded. So that's kind of the issue there with hiring somebody like that.
And no doubt. Yeah. I really have no idea what to expect at this point when it comes to our defensive coordinator. I'm just hoping that with school starting next week on Tuesday that, I guess if this program wasn't putting out a ton of YouTube videos, whenever class is in session, right, that you could probably be more tight-lipped about this for a while. But I imagine when the well-out videos and the Reach the People media videos are going to be starting off again, you can't really hide that for too much longer. We got to have an announcement here at some point within the next few days. But hey, looks like we got some breaking news, Russ. We got Nikhil Walker from New Mexico State. I know nothing about this guy, so is this Nikhil Webb-Walker? Is that the guy that we're looking at? I don't know much about him, but I'm looking up some of his stats right now, and we can kind of run through this really quickly. We can talk about this on the fly. But another edge linebacker coming in here. I love it. Okay, so you know that I like all this pro football focused stuff. Again, it's just a piece of the picture, so to speak, of the full picture, but bringing in some big size. Edge defender, 6'6", 255 pounds, has a handful of years of eligibility left, which is great. Mainly lined up, on the defensive line. We'll see, but my guess is, outside the tackle there at the edge position. Had a better 2022 season than 23 season. Who knows why, but let's get into the stats here. Tackling had a get into FaceTime. Can't do that. Got 14 tackles, 3 assists, 5 missed tackles, 3 sacks though. That's not, 3 sacks, 4 quarterback pressures, 8 quarterback hurries, alignment. Mainly I guess D line over, outside. At the edge. So this is a guy, my guess, that's going to come in here and compete for rotational snaps with other guys behind Wade and Okunloa. So that would be Quincy Wiggins. That would be Arden Walker. That would be Taj McCoy, D.V. Harris, all those other guys. What's your instant reaction to this, Russ?
Yeah, I don't have much on him either. And my guess, just based on these stats and kind of looking at all his stuff, I'm assuming this is more of a depth add than anything. Because again, when it comes to edge, you can never have enough. So I think that is going to be kind of his role, unless he surprises, who knows? But my guess is just adding some extra on the outside. Looks like he might also play some outside linebacker, it looks like. So again, I'm seeing all these people we're adding on the outside, and I just keep screaming like these are kind of your 3-4 technique, like pass rushing linebackers on the outside. So I'm again, it's just bringing up more of like they know who the DC is, they know what system they're going to run, and they're most likely recruiting for that system.
Yeah, I wonder. I've kind of wondered about this too. If we don't have, some super huge dudes that, like a big time nose tackle like Ndamukong Suh that we can throw in there. If a 3-down lineman, kind of 2 edge guy, like 5 guys up there on the line, playing a star and another linebacker out there might just be kind of how we stack that front 7. So maybe we just might not use as many like inside linebackers, on this team. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. But the fact that we're still loading up on edges, I think definitely points towards that sort of scheme being used. And y'all, I apologize about my mic issues. Let me know if I'm sounding better now. But that's pretty exciting. I think I'm not going to complain about bringing in more depth and competition here. But I guess I know there was another question that I had highlighted here. And let's kind of transition into this a little bit. Angela coming here. I was wondering why Coach Prime's not announced DC yet. We've talked a little bit about that. But I see with all the Alabama stuff that he probably knew what was coming. Any word yet? We can comment a little bit on this, and as well as like right now, how do you see this Alabama vacancy impacting college football? Do you think, CU can benefit from this?
I mean, that announcement just turned the entire college football world on its head.
Yeah.
Because when the number 1 coach in the entire sport retires, and it sounds like out of nowhere, because every report I've read has commented that the players are saying they had no idea. He only knew and made this decision within the last 2 weeks. So that also frustrates me because I feel bad for the recruits. They were told, yep, I'm going to go play for Saban, and they're not anymore.
It's a heartless business, man.
So, and that's why, there is that quote, don't play for the coach, play for the program, because, they could be gone at any moment. And so, what it's going to do is it's going to cause a ripple effect. It's all going to depend on who takes the job, because now you're talking about Alabama transfers. You're talking about then the person who's taking that job, and everything. It looks like DeBoer is going to take the job. I've seen a couple posts now on Twitter that says they're negotiating contract. So there's that Washington lineup is going to either move on to Alabama or they're going to leave Washington. And we all saw they get to the national championship game. They put together a pretty good performance. So those players are going to be high in demand across the country. So, and then whoever takes the Washington job is going to now cause a ripple effect to their program. So whenever a coach leaves, it just causes a domino effect. So one thing I will say, Coach Prime, really smart, probably knew it was coming, saved a couple of scholarships in our back pocket while other schools like Nebraska are already 10 scholarships over going into spring season. Like, we have some room to pick up some of these extra portal guys that'll be coming. So I'll be interested to see if this doesn't in fact happen. And we've already seen today one of Alabama's number one receivers hit the portal. So it's already starting. It's going to be a crazy next couple of weeks.
Yeah, this is going to be really fun to watch, to see what happens. Do we need probably a little bit more regulation on when coaches can announce that they're leaving and all this transfer portal NILs? I mean, sure, but from a news perspective, man, it keeps this news cycle going all year long. And Russ, I might have an unpopular opinion with this, but I know Kalen DeBoer has done a fantastic job at developing talent, but I don't believe he has any significant history or connections or experience in the Southeast portion of the country. This kind of seems a little out of left field. And I mean, I understand, okay, if like literally everybody else, Lanning, Sark, Lane Kiffin, Mike Norvell, like literally all those guys have turned down the job, but it is a little surprising that I guess he's going to have to take up, the Brian Kelly fake Southern accent, kind of thing, man, because this guy's barely spent any time in the South.
Here's the problem, and here's why all those coaches said no. I've been thinking about it all day since it happened. I saw somebody else mention this, and I haven't seen a ton of people talk about it. The next coach at Alabama is not going to succeed, no matter who goes in there. It's just not going to happen. You are not going to live up to Saban expectations, and your leash is going to be short. So really what all these coaches that turned it down are saying is, I don't want the job right now when the expectations are Saban level. Let somebody else go in there. Let somebody else have issues and fail. And when they get fired, now I only have to live up to being better than them rather than meeting the expectations of what Saban did at Bama. So I think it was a process of elimination. Unfortunately, I think DeBoer was probably their last call and their last kind of choice in this search. He still has the recognition being in the national championship game, but I wonder how much does his name recognition have in the SEC? How much will his name recognition have against the coaches that he'll be coaching against, like a Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, or what Missouri's put together? Prime said it himself. Saban retired not because he was ready to retire. He retired because he does not like the fact that nil is happening and that players are getting paid and that it's almost leveling the playing field, because it takes away some of that advantage that he had in just being Saban, which is fine. It's fine that he did that. But anybody that goes in there is going to have an extremely tough time.
Yeah, it's a tough job to take over. I just find this pretty funny, man. All these college coaches have, such big attitudes. They puff their chest out all the time about how amazing they are. Not that he was part of this conversation, but you see Ryan Day, calling other coaches, former coaches out after, he gets certain wins and all this stuff. All these guys act like they're tough guys, but then, when it's really time to face all the smoke, to live up to the expectation, none of these guys want it, man. And I understand it, but I also find it pretty funny, man, that's just how it is, man. They're all just playing characters. That's how I feel about it. Well, yeah, I'm really appreciative of your time, Russ. I got to start shutting things down here, but man, this has been a fantastic way to start my Friday, to start my weekend. For everybody that is tuning in for the first time, please go follow and subscribe again to Russ with Buffs News Weekly. Link is in the description of my video. But again, what can everybody that's watching look forward to seeing from you on YouTube, on Twitter, all of that?
Yeah, so I mean, we're going to be doing obviously our weekly news story going through the season. I'll do game recaps when we get to the season on Sundays. But other than that, on Twitter, I'm also part of a community that I want to shout out, which is the Undisputed Buffs. And the reason why I shout out that community, they are going to have an interview with Will Shepherd tomorrow in Spaces. So tomorrow afternoon, make sure you guys go join that community if you're on Twitter. We're a little over 500 strong, but anything the Buff Nation can do to just help us out and grow both my channel and the Twitter community over there is always appreciated. And I can't wait to bring some more stuff to them here in the near future.
I absolutely love it. Russ, this has been a huge pleasure. Thanks again for making your time today to talk with me. And everybody in the comments, really appreciate it. Again, y'all can look out for another video with this new Webb-Walker recruit or commit that we got, as well as a slight film session or small film session of Torian Carter from some of his 2021 film. We'll see how that looks, mainly with him playing B-Gap. So thank you guys so much. Y'all have a wonderful Friday. Stay safe with this crazy cold front coming in. And as always, Sco Buffs.
Sco Buffs.